Good morning and welcome to Beyond the SEAF model. This is effective for April 1st, 2024. My name is Jack Kosar. Let's get started. Our SEAF signals for this week are industrials, energy, and communication services. Communication services just beating out financials from last week, so these two flopped in the in the order, and a couple of consecutive weeks of industrials and energy. Starting to kind of show some strength here up top. Energy being held back slightly by the strategic quarter, but showing strength over the tactical month in the trading week. The key thing to note for this week's trading flows were extremely low this week in terms of our percent change. Really, the only outlier being energy at a quarter of a percent net increase in terms of asset flows. Everything else being relatively close to zero. With that being said, showing a couple of materials and utilities, both kind of trending in the right direction. We're going to hit those up a little bit later on our rainbow charts. So yeah, a couple of these outflows, specifically looking at this one in materials, was effectively zero. So while it is ranked eight for the trading week, the outflow wasn't concurrent with its actual ranking, but showing a little bit of lesser flows broadly. Um, Heading into our heat map, as we talked, when this thing is at its strength, we're seeing a lot of consistency with the greens, which really is showing up here in the both industrials and the energies, showing some strength. As I said, this is by far our strongest flow, both net for inflow or outflow. Everything else being under a tenth of a percent in terms of its change. Industrial still having a net positive flow, being at number two for the trading week. But energy, the name of the game right here really is energy, showing a lot of strength over the last month. And as some of those weaker flows that we were seeing in energy in the beginning of the year start to fall off, we should see energy kind of shoot up the ranking, even though it's already relatively highly rated as it is now. As I mentioned, showing materials and utilities. We'll look at those rainbow charts in a minute, but these things are trending in the right direction, 7 to 3. And again, this eight, um, while relatively low, is about zero in terms of its net change. So again, these things are currently in the a little bit lower on the ranking scale in terms of SEAF, but just some interesting paths as we've kind of watch these things grow. We like to see these things trend in the right direction, and that's something to highlight here. Going into our graphs, first off, looking at that materials that I was talking about, we did dip below into neutral due to its weekly ranking at 8. But again, due to the lack of strength in the flows, we are seeing a nice little bit of relative outperformance in materials. This is a space to kind of watch. Obviously, this is not a SEAF signal, but with this nice broad emerging trend of the relative outperformance going back to early February of this year, and kind of heading in this, going from avoid to favored on this weekly chart up here, dipping a little bit into neutral. A really strong outflow, or sorry, a really strong inflow next week could help propel this materials rating in more of a favored territory, especially with the reverse trend that we were kind of starting to see um, on materials. Now, going into our next chart, industrials, kind of in a industrials has been our top pick and has been doing well for us, sitting nice in this upward favor. As we can see, we can get this broadening trend. Get this heat man off. Broadening trend in terms of his relative outperformance versus SPY as we set up in this favored ranking. Um, Industrials had a little bit of a weaker inflow coming into this week, not quite as strong as our energy one, but that flow is still strong enough to keep us up in this favored ranking and continue this relative outperformance trend. Energy has our top inflow for this particular week, also top for the month. And energy seems to have a little bit of a slower trend sticks around a little bit longer in both its avoid and favored rankings. So that makes us feel a little bit good, especially with the convergence of that weekly strength and that inflow. We are seeing some relative outperformance starting to head in the right direction for energy as we are sitting in this favored ranking. Again, the overall ranking is sitting in ranking of two, but as you can see, we sat in this avoid territory for quite a bit of time. So as we're climbing up into this favorite, some of this older flows are going to drop off, and hopefully we continue to build this strength and momentum. As you can see, a similar pattern occurred toward the middle of last year. We had a period of uh, relative underperformance as we were sitting in this avoid ranking, climbed into the positive, neutral to favored, and we did see that relative outperformance trend for a couple of months in a row. So ideally, we can pick up a similar pattern here. Again, we're not projecting cash flows. I do not know what the marks are going to be for this upcoming week, but just watching the way that these charts react over time, we sit in this favor or avoid ranking, heading up into a positive favor for a bit of time shows that relative outperformance. So, ideally, if these charts have some kind of trend or pattern to them, we will see that relative outperformance, ideally start to spike up here as we continue to stay in that favored ranking. Like to also show on the flip side, consumer discretionary looks like it attempted to test that neutral with this slight little blip of relative performance, and turned back to negative, which reverses toward this kind of flatline, broadening negative trend in relative outperformance in for our consumer discretionary. Similar for technology, we had this broad climb up for relative performance in tech as we stayed mostly in this neutral to favored ranking. Um, we are starting to really trend in the opposite direction. Energy was actually a net outflow, our largest net outflow for the on the trading week, and ninth in the tactical month. So we are starting to see uh, technology trend in the wrong direction. It is coming up a little bit of on a support in terms of its relative performance. So we'll look to see if that gets tested over this next week or two. But broadly, money flowing out of energy actually really being held, or sorry, broadly flowing out of technology, with technology being held up and its broad overall ranking due to its quarterly numbers, which was the kind of run up that we've been seeing over the last few months. So we're starting to see technology drop off. Last but not least, kind of wanted to mark off utilities. Again, nothing to do here. Per se, we are relatively flat on the relative performance, but in terms of watching the outflows going from worst ranked on the strategic or the quarter down to seventh for the tactical month and now ranking three. As I did mention, that three was pretty close to a zero change on the the overall inflow for that trading week, but we are seeing a little bit of relative, ever so slight trend in relative outperformance. This is things pointing in the right direction. This is just a place to note. We are just poking out a neutral. I would like to see this thing head up a little bit more, but in terms of reversals in how those flows are coming in, seeing a big negative outflow on the strategic to top three in the trading week. We would look for a couple of extra weeks of the confirmation in the trading week to get the positive flows. Excuse me, but broadly a place to kind of um, materials and sorry materials and utilities as places to we're sitting in that neutral, starting to point up in the right direction in terms of relative performance. While they're not C signals, they are trending in the right direction, and if they can build on the momentum that they're starting to acquire, could be some things that move up the charts for our rankings, and then subsequently show that relative outperformance. That is all I have for this week. I hope everyone has a wonderful week, and I look forward to breaking down the SEAF model with you all next week.